Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review All of Us Are Dead, Season 1, Episode 1. So, of course, as any traditional first episode-like things, we all have to get to know who people are. So we're going to have to go and take one episode that is kind of building up to a big, massive invasion of zombies. But we do get there towards the kind of the back half of the episode where it seems like, ooh, like already this is kind of popping off to be very interesting. But here's the thing that I will say about this show. I will go on and say that this show is to feel like, hey, you couldn't have brought chicken for the whole class? And so now all of a sudden, we just have it to where all the rest of the class are just starving because this only small chunk of people had gone on and eaten chicken. And so the rest of the class is just like, you know what, I'm so hungry. I'm just, you know what? Yeah. Tastes good. Like I feel like it's like that. I feel like the setup is like that. Because immediately while I'm seeing this group all like chow down some chicken, I'm like, where's mine? I'm hungry now for chicken. You sons of bitches. Maybe I should have sat down while I was at dinner, just gnawing away at some. I'm hoping chicken, but probably not. But yeah, like I guess this show would have been perfect at dinner time. Weirdly, even though we have some people like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to eat during this show. I can understand that, but it seems that this show, like, compared to like Sweet Home, and I don't want to make that easy comparison. Like this show is a little bit toned down compared to that, because that show goes into some zombies, some interesting visual zombies, but also a little bit tamer, like the normal Walking Dead, the normal like Train to Busan, the normal. This also kind of feels like hashtag alive to me, and also we have kind of a school that is to look just like the movie As the Gods Will. If you go on and look on the trailer for As the Gods Will, I immediately went on to see this classroom. I'm like, man, this looks so familiar to that classroom, and I'm kind of curious if they just bought the same like school or the same set piece and just reused it, because it seems like it. In all honesty, but I know I don't want to like have a lot of people just say, no, that's just the same stereotypical classroom that all of these schools have. It all looks the exact same. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying that it looks similar. It looks vastly similar. So when we go on into All of Us Are Dead, the first episode, we have this be a getting to know people episode, but it also seems that they are kind of setting up kind of an interesting way to kind of bring us into a zombie show, because I guess they're trying to, as much as possible, do something so drastically different than a normal setup of a zombie show. But I just think, I'm like, man, this is kind of a really hard shift of a direction, but okay. So really we go on and we have, at the beginning of this story, we have a kid being bullied, and we also have another girl who is being humiliated by her forcibly taking her top off and having a bunch of guys videotaping her and just kind of walking around and videotaping her without no shirt, underwear, nothing on, and she's to kind of shield herself. But we go on and we have a number of these kids that are all of a sudden thinking like, well, maybe we should go on and delete this. Maybe we should go, like, maybe we're having second thoughts, yada, yada, yada. So but we still have it where this girl is still bullied to the point of her wanting to go on and do some extreme measures to have this all be resolved. So, but we go on, and it seems that we're having a zombie apocalypse of sorts. A zombie, I always see a zombie invasion of things, even though really it's like it's not like somebody's just coming like from out of left field to all of a sudden just be like, hey, I'm here. I'm like, no, we have like this all like contained into this school, and I can't help but think like, you know what, if hashtag alive had a much like better setup of how this all broke down, and it wasn't just all like a zombie apocalypse just kind of all of a sudden happening on one day. um, like I think that this would be very similar to the show, or but like hashtag alive goes on and is to be much more of like a waiting it out kind of movie, where I think that that's like the weirdest approach, but they have interesting enough things put in place in that film. But anyways, so it just feels similar. It just does. But we have it to where it's like in my brain, I'm still thinking that this is really a copy and paste of High School of the Dead, and a lot of people make a comparison to that. So, excuse me. So, with that said, yeah, that's all that I want to say about the show so far. I would say that this pilot episode is to have or to give us some potential. And I know that's to like that sounds really weird because a lot of people are like, no man, like right out of the gate, the show looks so cool, and I'd be like, okay, like it's a lot of getting to know people episode, and it's just like I don't know. I've seen too many zombie shows to give this a like an outrageous like, oh my god, this show, oh, oh my god, oh, it's unique. No, it doesn't really like it. It isn't. It's unique enough, but it looks better than a lot of other zombie shows out there. So I'll give it that. I like already how we're going in this big, massive scale. I'm like, man, aren't they a little concerned about doing like this in a big approach, a big way? But I guess not. Um, but hey, like really, when looking at it, like if you can do the show, go ahead. So, with that said, I think it's about time to just go into spoilers about this one, double five it up. One thing that I will say, I will go out of my way to say here for the cast list. More than likely, I'm not going to know every single person's name that is to pop through this show. There's also going to be some times where I'm going to be butchering names until I get used to them or I hear them more frequently. So, at any point in time, if I am to butcher some name somewhere and people feel the need to correct me, that's fine, but this is the first time that I'm ever seeing, hearing, looking at people's faces or voices or whatever. So, at the end of the day, I'm probably going to forget a lot of stuff as far as who people are until I get into this show a lot more often. So, hence why this is a one-off episode thing. And if this does very well for some odd reason, then I'm going to obviously continue to do it. If it goes really well, then I'm going to go on and do it every single day. So I'm going to go out of my way to continue this if people are interested. So let's go out of our way to go into this double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this one because it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this show. So we of course go on and we immediately have In-soo. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. In-soo at a very high building is to all of a sudden get bullied by a number of kids. We of course just have this group that is just to be called these bullies. And we'll get to go on and find out who they are separately at some points when the story is to be important enough to need to know certain names, as well as any number of group. Because I know a lot of people, or I know a lot. For me, I would just go on and say, this is classroom characters. A classmate. Vague. How vaguely can I just say this name and that name? Anyways, so we go on and we have In-soo, who is starting to get clocked and beaten up by these bullies. So much so that I guess he is to turn rabid. Or in this case, he is to turn very aggressive. And his aggressive nature is to all of a sudden have him start to become very veiny and is to be more animalistic. And so when we go on and we have this character who is starting to turn more animalistic, he is of course going on and starting attacking back his attackers, because we have these bullies that are going on and telling In-soo that he, I guess, was to attempt to take his own life by cutting into himself because of, I guess, him being bullied so aggressively. So, and that possibly In-soo was to out who was the people that were to force him to want to do this. And so that's why they're going after In-soo and beating him up. Because, of course, In-soo, I think, is to tell his father, who's Mr. Lee, who is a science teacher. So we go on here and we have In-soo fighting off these bullies to the point of them deciding to, because this guy has a very, like, he won't stop kind of thing, he keeps coming at these guys. We just go on and have one of these bullies who goes and takes In-soo and chucks him off of this rooftop. He smacks against this sign and this fire escape, and he just makes his way down to the bottom of the building and then supposedly dies, but we would find out different. So we go on and we have these characters who are, of course, to leave. And so we go on and we have In-soo, who is to make it to this hospital, and he has a number of things being placed onto his bate. And so we go on and have Mr. Lee arrive at this hospital. And so we go on and we have In-soo talking to his father, because evidently he's not dead. I'm like, oh my god. So this guy probably... What probably Mr. Lee did was probably to put a number of things inside of his son, so that way his son would go on and never be hurt by these men. And plus also, Mr. Lee was thinking, since no one was probably going to do anything for his son, that possibly In-soo should go on and figure out some way to defend himself. And really we just have here, and I know a lot of people will probably break this down quickly, we kind of have like a Hulk kind of thing going on, where you have Mr. Lee, who's kind of a scientist who is experimenting on his son, so that way he can get angry and be able to defend himself without him getting hurt. But then Mr. Lee is to go on and realize that it seems that his son gets far too aggressive, and this just won't stop. To where we go on and we have it to where In-soo's like revenge is kind of insatiable, to where he just wants to go on and just kill everybody, and it's not to just seek revenge upon these kids. So we all of a sudden go on and have In-soo, who's starting to get more aggressive, more zombie-like, and so we just sadly have his father, who just beats him to death with this book. as like kind of look around like, hey, hopefully nobody's watching because I'm gonna beat my son with his Bible. I'm gonna beat him to death. So we go on here and we all of a sudden have Lee who's like do with this thing of luggage in a hospital. That makes a lot of sense. So we have Mr. Lee just dragging this thing of luggage, and so all of a sudden we go on and we have Mr. Lee going and pulling out an arm to kind of check for the pulse, and all of a sudden this arm is grabbing at Mr. Lee, and he's like, "Oh my god!" It's like, I'm just gonna shove this arm back in this luggage and just make it out of this hospital. So now we transition on to of course this one scene, so we can make a very smooth transition here. So we go on and we have Mr. Lee, who I guess is to have a student who is to go and try to clean the science lab. And so Mr. Lee goes and sees a girl called Youngju. Hyungju. And so we go on here and we have this girl who is kind of looking around in this science lab. All of a sudden she hears this kind of noise and she's like, what's that about? So all of a sudden she ends up kind of knocking on this box, and the box knocks back. She's like, interesting. So Hyungju goes and opens this box and this metal part of this box, sets it aside to find out there is to be some. They call it a hamster, but it looks like a mouse to me, or mice. Like it looks like a mouse. Like it doesn't look like a hamster to me, but I guess it is what it is here. So we go on. We have this girl who you would think that she would just be like, "Oh yeah, here's a little scrap of a little cracker that I had. Here you go." But instead, this girl is a moron, in all honesty, and hence when the way of which that she ends up in this story, like I don't honestly feel 100% horrible by this stupid act here, because we have Hyungju who goes on and puts her finger in one of the holes, and she's like, "Hey, yeah, let me go and let me just touch this thing. Hopefully I don't get a vicious virus or a thing that is going to kill me off here." So all of a sudden we of course have this hamster that goes and bites this girl, and then she's like, "Oh, it made me bleed." So Mr. Lee is all of a sudden going into the room. It's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And she's like, "Yeah, this hamster thing just bit me." And so Mr. Lee's like, "Huh, that's too bad, because I'm going to have to go and quarantine you off. Hopefully I don't have to go and beat you with a book anytime soon." Good grief. So we go on, and I guess Mr. Lee is to realize that I guess his own son was a failed cause. I guess his son was just far too deep into this infection. There was no going back. So we go on and we have Mr. Lee that goes on and is trying to put injections into this girl, Hyungju, and he's just finding out that it's just kind of it's stalling the virus. It's stalling the infection upon this girl, and that slowly but surely there's nothing he's going to be able to do but to just kind of wait it out for this girl to eventually become this rage monster that basically is to be dubbed as a zombie. So we go on, and so let's get to the other story of things. So we go on and we have two kids who are Anjo and Lee. So So it's Lee Chong Song, if I'm saying that ballparkingly correct. It's a kid who is to, of course, have a chicken restaurant be named after him. Weirdly enough, we have his parents, who I guess were psychics, and were immediately thinking that they were going to have a son because they end up calling the chicken restaurant after their son, but they were already going to call this restaurant this name, knowing that they were going to have a son ahead of time because, like, the restaurant has been called that longer than this kid has been alive. So they just psychically knew that they would have a kid one day and call him that. So what if he wouldn't have liked the name? What if he would have just changed his name quickly? Like, no, I'm not going to get called that. So we go on and we have these two kids who are, of course, going on and being the best of friends. So we have these two kids going and eating chicken. Of course, at this kid's, at Lee's restaurant, or Lee's parents' restaurant, but it's named after him technically. So, because we go on and we have Lee who's mentioning that his parents had changed the name for the restaurant and they're wanting to confirm the name with their son. So we go on, and of course, it seems that any one of Lee's friends is to get free chicken all the time. So we go on and we have them eat chicken. And so we have it to where Jo is going with Lee and kind of messing with her hair, kind of putting it down, kind of adjusting her ears, and says to Lee, it's like, well, hey, how do you like it? Do you like it this way? Do you like it that way? So we have Lee who's just like, meh, like, what should it matter how your hair is? So we go on and we have Jo who just goes and kicks Lee in the butt consistently. So they end up going home, and so the next school day, we have both these characters who are to go on and do paper, rock, scissors to see who basically is going to be their butler for the day. Because kick in the butt, butler. But anyways, we have Jo, who of course is to speak to her father. Som Soju, or Nam Soju. So we go on and we have this dialogue between them, and so we of course have Jo, who's talking to Soju, and so really it's just kind of like common talk, really, how Jo really did need her chicken, and that it seems that both Jo's father and her are to have the same idea about this chicken and how it is tasty, but it's salty. To where Lee goes and makes fun of Jo for her mentioning that it was salty at the restaurant. And so we go on and we have the parents of Lee who's saying like, oh, like she says it's salty, huh? What should we do about that? Nothing. Because one person's criticism, it's like, is anybody else going to complain about it being salty? No. Only Jo's father does. So we find out that Jo's father, of course, is to be this EMT or this EMS rescue paramedic guy and we'll immediately find that out within the first episode. So, but anyways, we just have kind of Soju kind of upset that his daughter didn't go on and eat all her food, so he's just like, meh, I guess more for me then. She really didn't eat anything at all. So, uh, it seems that also like Jo is kind of at a kind of fork in the road about things, and so we're gonna go and find out in this episode what the fork of the road is. So, to where at the very beginning of class, she's going on and kind of telling one of her friends like, "Hey, I'll tell you later, but like, don't ask me about it now because we're in class." So now we of course have it where Ung Jo is going and doing paper rock scissors with Lee, and we find out that she is to be forced to have to be Lee's gopher for the day, and kind of hold his backpack for her, or Ung Jo is to hold Lee's backpack for the whole day. To be like, yeah, you're my gopher, because I guess they do that all the time. Maybe they do that once a week. Not quite sure. So we go on, and we of course have it where we are also going to talk about these bullies. So we have a number of these bullies here that, of course, are to uh, go and have Min Yu Ji, Min Yu Ji, go on forcibly take her shirt off and do videos on her shirtless. And so we go on. We also have Kim Cho Kim Chuol So Kim, the guy that eventually will go on and see at the rooftop with this girl, with Min. So that way that's a lot easier to understand. We have both of these characters being bullied by these bullies, and so that's a lot easier to say here. So we go on, and we of course have Soo Hyuko, or no wait, Soo Hyok, the guy that of course is to eventually talk to the class president, and it seems that he is really interested in her, even though she couldn't really be interested in this guy, because of course she has earbuds in, and she really has no interest in really talking to anybody, even when some people are kind of running to her and like, class president, and immediately we just have Cho, who's like, I don't give about any of these people, like, like I'm not even really the class president, because she says this in this episode. She goes on and talks to the same guy that I just mentioned, who she goes on and says that it seems this school had donated a bunch of money, or her parents had donated a bunch of money for her to just instantly become class president. So there was no election being held. It was just the fact that her mother donated so much money that they went on and just instantly made her class president. So, that's what happens when you start out the day and you're already just tongue tied a little bit. So we go on and we have these bullies just go about their day because they have to go to school like any normal common person. So we of course have Park Soo-hwa, or Park Soon-hwa, who of course is to be a teacher here, And so we go on and have her start off this class after everybody is to start to kind of quickly get into class. We have some people who I guess are to be deemed tardy because they are to not be able to walk to school early enough. So a lot of people are kind of filling tardy slips, and they're gonna get demerits and all this weird goofy stuff. So we push on and have all our characters. I think Anjo ends up being late, but we of course have Anjo going and talking to, uh, of course, Lee Soo Hyok. Uh, I'm gonna butcher these names, and so Anjo, of course, is talking to Lee and stating that, hey, like, uh, after lunch, like, don't go off and go outside. Uh, Come and like talk to me. And he's like, for what? And she's like, no, just kind of like just we'll talk about it later. So we go on and we have it where after class is starting, we of course have Park Sung Woo, who's to realize that it seems that one student is missing. So after she's to go and collect all these cell phones and uh, certain students couldn't have been bothered to go and bring up all of their cell phones, so she's kind of pinpointing some of them out where of course they didn't even put it on silent, so she's having to like, hey, bring them all up. So we go on here and we of course have this class just starting off. So we also have one of the teachers that is to be kind of suspicious to a lot of these students, and we'll talk about that later. Really, it's Mr. Lee. And we're going to go and have all the students talk about him later, and because they just find him to just be weird. So we'll get to that. So we have this teacher going on and starting this class. I'll call her Park for the rest of the show because it's easier. So we have Park, who all of a sudden is to realize that uh, Yongju is missing from this class. So she stops the class to go and talk with Mr. Lee and mention like, "Hey, Yongju, like, it seems like she's missing from our class. Do you know anything about that? Because it seems like, if anything, she might have been in your science lab last night." And Mr. Lee's like, "Well, that's weird because I didn't go into my science lab last night, so don't know." So all of a sudden we have kind of rattling in the background, and Park is asking Mr. Lee, it's like, "Well, hey, like, what's that rumbling?" And we have Mr. Lee saying, "Oh, it was just my hamster that I have." She's like, "Oh, okay." So she walks off. So we of course have Mr. Lee, who is kind of zip tied this girl to a radiator and taped her mouth. I think we had one point where we had like a janitor who was making his way or making his rounds through this school and doesn't find this girl. So we go on into the show, and so after Lee is kind of mentioning that this is only delaying this infection, so while Park is gone, we have a number of students that are kind of all whispering here, and they're saying that they think that Mr. Lee is to smell weird. It seems like he is to smell like a dead corpse, and it also seems that Mr. Lee is to be very weird. At one point, one of their classes with him, all of a sudden, he was to start just scribbling upon this board, and talk about viruses and how talk about viruses and parasites. And there at one point was a snail that was to sacrifice himself to try to avoid uh, getting killed by a parasite that is to go inside of him, because of course that could have easily killed him. And so a snail had taken its own life to avoid a parasite, which I think is kind of a interesting kind of like, instead of like fighting it, he just kind of flees from it. So we go on and we have Mr. Lee all of a sudden kind of putting some things on this chalkboard, and all of a sudden he goes on to just scramble nonsense upon this blackboard and then walks off. People are like, okay, that's a little unusual. So we also have it to where even he is to correct this textbook, going on and saying that a virus isn't a living organism. And he's like, oh no, it's a living organism. Like, you guys like, I think the text is just has a typo there, or is just wrong, and I'm going to be able to prove it wrong by having this study here. So now we have Parks that re-arrives um, at this class. So we have, I believe, a guy named Berceau. When Park starts getting the class going, we all of a sudden have Berceau, who is to, I guess, obviously not be paying attention with what's going on in the class. So much so that Park is to single him out, get him to stand up, and is to, of course, have him recite what one other girl had just said. And we, of course, have him who, my God, freaking names here. Anyways, pushing on. So, we go on and we have Berceau, who of course goes on and is to realize, yeah, like, I guess I really wasn't paying attention, because he was to go on and say that this girl is absolutely correct. And the teacher is like, well, what was she correct about? And the more and more we have to where the guy's like, like, maybe you should pay attention a little bit more in class. So we go on and we have Park here, who all of a sudden, while and Berceau is to notice this also. Berceau is to kind of pinpoint that there's a girl that is to be at this door, and it seems like she is to be covered in blood. So we have, of course, this being Young-ju, who is to now need to seek medical attention, because it seems like she's going to eventually turn into this zombie soon. So we have Park, and we have a bunch of these classmates all taking this girl to the nurse's office. And so we have this nurse that is going to call emergency services, but she wants to go and put a sedative into this girl to kind of knock her out. So while they're putting her onto this bed, because they have to go on and try to weirdly get her temperature up, because I guess her temperature is at a weird, I think, 29 degrees. So she's like, wow, that is like very unusually cold. So they're going on and trying to put it, of course, a like blanket on her to try to like put her temperature further up. So while that's going on, we of course have Ung-jo, who ends up getting, of course, bitten by this girl. I'm like, oh, or no, I think she ends up getting scratched by this girl. I'm like, she's gonna turn, sadly enough. So I'm like, they're putting a lot of time into Ung-jo, and I'm like, but she's probably gonna turn soon. Huh? Like, I think she's the main character, so that doesn't make any sense. Like, what are they gonna have her, like, have a really slow process of her turning throughout a number of these episodes? Is it all going to have to be in like one fell swoop of one day? kind of like Day of the Dead, where like they're gonna have to slowly but surely have her turn, or they're gonna chop her arm off. Maybe a scratch doesn't cause her becoming a zombie, because it seems like most of the zombies are biting people. I don't know. But we also have the nurse who is to have also been bitten by Young Ju. So we go on, we have this nurse who is eventually starting to have symptoms. It seems much quicker than I guess this other girl had, because she didn't have any kind of medication to stall this infection. So we go on and we have Park going and immediately no wait, the nurse doesn't get infected. Wait, she doesn't even get infected yet. Let's put a cork in that. That I've kind of gotten ahead of myself. So they go on, and of course we have the ambulance that, of course, is to arrive to pick up Young Ju, send her off to a hospital, and we of course have the police also being called because it seems that people were to go on and find this girl. And so the girl is mentioning that Mr. Lee had taken her, and when Park was to question Mr. Lee about it, he was trying to hold off really saying anything. So Park feels that things are way too suspicious here, like there is some kind of kidnapping being done. So all of a sudden we have now Park and Mr. Lee and the principal all talking, and all the principal gives a about is that soon they will be going on and getting some examination, and this is one thing that's going to really hurt that. And it's like, really? That's all you give a about? Not the health and well-being of your students? You. So we go on, we have Mr. Lee that is saying like, hey, like this girl like should not be out and about. She should be quarantined off. And we of course have it to where the principal is saying like, whatever you're saying is just bullshit. I'm not trusting what you're saying right now, and really Park should not have called the police because it seems all too soon to go and be doing anything like that. So all of a sudden we end up having some detectives called here, and so we have Song Jae 2, because I guess he's Song Jae the second. We of course have Song coming in and is very familiar with Mr. Lee, goes and cuffs him, gets him out of this spot. We also have to realize that probably Mr. Lee is probably going to get infected soon, and so more than likely Mr. Lee is going to infect people and is going to possibly kill this detective, as well as probably the police precinct when eventually he turns at some point, because it seems that the kids are to find out that Young Ju is to smell identically just like Mr. Lee, and they only say that he smells like a dead corpse because they have never smelt anything like this before. So more than likely, that has to be the conclusion of a dead corpse. So we go on here, and so now it feels like I can go and talk about the nurse getting infected because I think I've covered everything else so far. So we go on and we have the nurse that gets infected, and so two of the bullies is to come into fray of said nurse, Chang Hoon and Song Myung Hon. And so we have two of these characters that are to go and spot the nurse, and they say that she looks drunk, and all of a sudden we have the nurse who goes on and runs towards Shang Hoon and is to bite him and infect him. And we, of course, have the one other bully who runs off because he's like, F this. Like, I'm not going to get bitten. So all of a sudden we have Sheng-hoon here who goes on and starts infecting a number of people, going into a classroom, and all of a sudden is to bite one girl. We have one guy who's trying to defend this girl being bitten, and so this guy ends up getting bitten also. We end up having at some point where a bunch of classmates are all being just tossed through this window, and more people are just getting infected, bitten, and whatever. So we go on and we have both Menu G and Kim that are both on this rooftop because UG is thinking about jumping. So Kim is trying to prevent this girl off this ledge. Because we also have it where we had UG in this classroom and we had Yoon. Yoon, who of course is to be one of the bullies, that is going and putting on the back of this girl's shirt that I think it ends up saying I'm sexy, and we have like a heart driven and whatever. So we have this guy who's using a Sharpie against this girl's shirt, and she starts crying in class because again she feels again doubly humiliated. So we go on and we have Kim who's confirming to Min here that he's going to go on and try to get these guys to delete these videos, or he'll delete it, or he'll like help her. And so Min is turning to Kim and she's like, well, why would you want to go out of your way to do that? Like, do you like me or something? And Kim is just like, so she's like, wow. So two losers going on and dating one another. Man, is this going to be lame. So we of course had this girl that doesn't, I don't think, really have interest in this boy. Or dating. I think really her thought process is just jumping off this roof, and Kim just going out of his way to prevent her from doing it. All of a sudden she turns and sees all these zombies just one by one just flying through these windows, to where I think she is to value her life and is to kind of pull back here. So we go on and we have Hung Jo, and we have Lee, and we have Soon Isaac, or Yoon Isaac. I'm butchering names here. Yoon talking to An-jo, and we have the two characters going and talking about what An-jo had done, because she is going and talking to Lee, and this is the Lee, of course, that was to go with An-jo and help Young-ji. Any other names we have to kind of say here? Make her way to the ambulance, and An-jo is getting her hand bandaged up by her own dad. And so An-jo's dad is telling her, hey, like, if you have any problems, like, just let me know. Like I can't be here all day, sadly. And An-jo is like, hey, go off to work. Like, you're already too late anyways. So An-jo and Lee are going off, and An-jo is telling Lee that she likes him by giving her her name tag, that I guess is normally on a number of her clothes for school. So I guess that symbolifies, I guess, for this class, that she likes him. So we have An-jo who explains that to her friend. She's like, oh, so you threw yourself at him. She didn't say anything. She didn't really do anything. She didn't kiss this guy. But I guess that still means, like, technically, that she threw herself at him. So we go on and we have the guy who, when uh, the chicken owner kid, uh, the chicken joint that he's named after kid, the Xiong Song, is to go and run off to meet with Ong Jo and ask her, like, hey, are you hurt? Like, are you okay? And so she walks off. We, of course, have Lee, who asks Xiong Song, like, hey, like, you dating her? And he's like, no, man, like, if we ever had a zombie apocalypse, he would choose a zombie over Ong Jo. It's like, well, I'm sure you're going to get to that point in X amount of minutes. So why do they have to like perfectly say that in a very just like goofy way? Whatever. So we go on and we have this zombie apocalypse that's just popping off. So coincidentally, at this cafeteria, we have Ong Jo and we have Shong Song, who are with Ong Jo's friend, and so they're talking about if Shong Song should go and know something about Lee, to pass along if Lee said anything to this guy about of course Ong Jo, to where we have it to where this guy is asking Ong Jo, it's like, what does that matter? Why do you care? Maybe thinking that, like, maybe there is a chance that Ong Jo is still maybe more interested in Shong Song here. All of a sudden, while they're at this cafeteria, this lunch, this whatever, all of a sudden, zombies just come crashing through this glass door. I'm like, man, there's a hefty amount of like glass that's over by this cafeteria. Hopefully no zombies just come crashing through it. I'm just waiting for them to go into like the gymnasium for some odd reason. Just kind of see like this kind of being played out here. To see zombies and like people in the gym, it would be kind of a cool event to just kind of see a normal gym class being like done, and all of a sudden these zombies would just like nah, 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 going after people. That'd be kind of funny. But we have it where this episode really ends with this cafeteria, and all these zombied people are just kind of bashing their way through this class and are now going through and taking down a number of people in this cafeteria. And to me, that's where this episode really just ends, with them just going on and having possible Ong Jo, who is to have to fear for her life as there's a zombie that's kind of like kind of walking on top of her, and we really have it that to be that might possibly be the thumbnail for this episode, because maybe I might go on and change it because this episode hasn't been out for very long. So more than likely I might be tweaking certain images or adjusting certain things. But yeah, that's how the episode is technically to be broken down so far. Really, in all honesty, like, I'm not really fluid in these names. I'm not really fluid in whatever so far, on how to easily break this down. So eventually I'll get there. There'll be some kind of attempts and whatever this is. So with that said, I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing because we have a lot of the same names here. Not everybody is, like, it seems like a lot of people are all named Lee, or to all be named whatever. Or I butchered a couple names there, so I'm sorry. Because everybody, like, we have Mr. Lee, and then we have Lee, and we have So everybody's probably going to get confused of that I was talking about here, because there's 10 different people that are all named Lee in this show. So, man, is that really helpful for a show to. When really looking at it, also, in the IMDb of things, they don't really give a about the casting of the show. It obviously just feels like there's like 10 different names and that's it. Like IMDb even just gave up because they're like, like we're not even gonna try to like give you a cast list upon this show. And I think probably even if this show is a really massive success, like I think still IMDb won't put that much of an effort. If it was Squid Game, they would go on and just all day long, just like, oh, this is everybody. Um, and funny enough, we do actually have a girl who's to be the redheaded girl in this episode, which, like, to me, didn't have enough marinating time for me to like have her have any real importance yet. She is actually from Squid Game, and so if people are to possibly think that she's familiar from Squid Game. Uh, but heaven forbid I know who she is in Squid Game. Besides her number, because I think she was like 262 or something like that. Um, but yeah, the redheaded girl in this show, she's actually from Squid Game. So I'm like, ooh. So they're kind of tossing some characters into a lot of other Netflix shows that are actually from Squid Game. I think the whatever the astronaut show is, we have a couple of characters that are from Squid Game that are also in that show. I think it's called like the Silent Sea or something like that. I don't know. I know it's really popular, but like, I don't want to go into that kind of show. I just don't. It'll have to be that it's really something really interesting to, and I just don't think it's quite there for me. Hence why I go on to a simplistic zombie show. A zombie show is easy for me to just want to be interested in watching, but um, a space show, I'm like, ugh, like I think there's gonna be a lot of technical rigmarole, and I just don't want to go into a technical, complex show. But then going into this kind of show, like as far as naming off names and stuff like that, that's easy, right? I don't know. So go out of your way to let me know how you feel about all of us are dead. If I can even say the name of the title of the show, let me know how you feel about this so far. If you watched the whole show and you're gonna like, yeah, like I watched this whole show in one fell swoop of a thing, and I didn't, because that's bound to happen. Um, just let me know in the comments below how you felt about this show, and you could probably write it off as just another zombie show, which I can understand that. People can write it off as like, well, like I don't care if it feels like it's very familiar, blah 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 blah. Like I just want another zombie show because maybe you just went off and just saw Day of the Dead and you just wrapped that up recently, because weirdly we have a number of people that are still interested in Day of the Dead, and they just love zombie shows. So they just wanted to go on and find this one and like this one and whichever. So really, for me, based on how this is to be broken down, people might just like this show anyways, because they like are really interested to see how this breaks down. Or really, a lot of people might be just interested in a High School of the Dead real live action show. Because that's what it feels like. That's honestly, if you watch High School of the Dead, a live action or the animated show, and then you watch this, more than likely you would probably say that's better if you watched it, if you watched the anime. Um, but like you'll probably also like this. You'll like it also. But it'll be interesting to see other episodes besides this one, because like it feels like this one is rushing right into like, hey, let's just get the zombie stuff over with, so that way we focus on that, the bigger massive breakdown of all of this. And I like the fact that this show gets to that point, whereas a number of other things would just go on and just like, oh, well, let's like slow trickle down this zombie infection and invasion and apocalypse and whatever. And we're just going to go on and just give you the whole day one of understanding who all these people are. And then at the last like 2 minutes, we'll just give you somebody that goes and somebody. And then like on to the next episode. Where in the next episode we're going to show the build of the whole, like, no, it seems like right out of the gate we get like a patient zero, and we go on and have this infection starting to build, and so it's really just interesting enough. So I'm going to go and say goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.